Alright, hey guys, and welcome to the final episode of games I bought recently for 2011. To take us out for this year, I've got a good mix of retro, modern, handheld, and console games here, so let's get started. Alright, first up is a Game Boy Advance game, Iridion 2. Now, I had played Iridion 1 on the Game Boy Advance. I had traded my copy of Rayman with a friend to get his copy of Iridion 3D. And back then, Iridion, for those of you that don't know, this is a shooter or a shmup on the Game Boy Advance. The first Iridion game sort of had this behind the ship view, so it wasn't like a side scroller, it was more like you're constantly going down a tunnel. But the 3D effects, it uses a rendered background that repeats over and over, but it gives a great effect of 3D, and my god, like, I'm just going to say this is one of the best looking Game Boy Advance games I've ever played. This game has blown my mind. First of all, it's an amazing game. It's a lot of fun. There's a handful of different weapons that you can power up. The soundtrack is amazing. It kind of sounds at times like a workout video because it's so upbeat and energetic. But the enemy sprites are so detailed, it's amazing. And the backgrounds, once again, are pre-rendered sprites and they're constantly scrolling. But as you move left and right through the level, it kind of shifts the perspective of the stage itself as well as the enemies on screen. So it gives a really great effect, and wow, what a great looking game this is. Highly recommend this to anybody that's a fan of shooters, and if you have a Game Boy Advance, definitely, without a doubt, pick this one up. Much better than the first Iridion game. Okay, next, I just got to thank a YouTuber here. I've mentioned him before, but Games of War. Anytime I watch this guy's videos, I always end up on eBay because he has such a similar taste in games to me. It's unbelievable. Every time I talk to him on Skype, he's always giving me game recommendations and everything, and I really appreciate it because I really do like his recommendations, and this is one of them. This game here is an import for the Sega Saturn. It's called Tryrush Deppy. This is a 2D side-scrolling platformer that it kind of reminds me more of like a slower-paced Sonic the Hedgehog because you do have sort of a dash ability that you can charge up and sprint across the levels. This is actually import only. But it's very import friendly. There's actually no Japanese in this game, so you can totally just buy this, play it without any problems whatsoever. Very cutesy game, very colorful. The bosses have some nice large sprite work. The only downside is that the game is not that common and it's actually pretty expensive. Expect to pay at least $150 to get a copy of this game on eBay. Sellers tend to overcharge a little bit. Don't pay any more than that because they're selling this game for like $300. Way too much overpriced. But it's a lot of fun. I've played through it 3 times now, 2 times of which I've gotten totally stuck on the last boss in this game because for the most part it's a very easy game and it doesn't get very hard until the very last boss, which is like a boss rush mode. Very well done, but it's extremely frustrating and hard. I live streamed it one night and people watched me get pretty mad because it's aggravating. It's a lot of fun though. You play as actually, I forgot to mention, you play as this little taxi cab guy here in the front cover, and it's very cute, very cutesy. Anybody that's a fan of platformers, and if you have a Sega Saturn that you can play imports on, which is very easy to do, definitely check out Tryrush Deppy. Okay, Solatorobo Red the Hunter on the Nintendo DS. I did buy the import version of this, you guys know, and then like days afterwards, they announced it was getting released in the US. This is a spiritual sequel to Tail Concerto on the PS1. This game, once again, as I said with Iridion, how that showed off the graphics of the Game Boy Advance, Solatorobo is one of the best looking games I've ever seen on the DS. Now, it's not the entire game that looks amazing, but when you get in the towns in this game, the level of sprite scaling and perspective and just amazing detail that they put into the towns is unbelievable. Some of the best I've seen on the system. And what this game is, it's a third-person action RPG. But take the term RPG very lightly because the battles are actually extremely simplified. It plays more like a brawler or almost a very light puzzle game, believe it or not, during the action sequences because all you're doing is you have a very light combo system where you play as Red, he's in this mech, and you bash your enemies and you mash on the A button to pick them up. And then you throw them. You can throw them into other enemies. When you throw them, you can jump again and pick them up and throw them again, and they kind of bounce up, and you jump up and grab them again and throw them again. Very simple. It doesn't actually do anything exceedingly well, besides the graphics in some cases, but it's just such a well-rounded game. Story-wise, I've been told that it picks up about 8 hours in. The game, I've heard, is about 20 hours. I myself am about 4.5, 5 hours into it. But it's got a lot of different missions and side quests where you can take them on and rank up so that you can take on even harder quests and get more money to upgrade your mech. And the mech upgrading in this is actually pretty fun too. It plays like a puzzle game where you have to piece your upgrades into this square grid and turn them different ways to be able to fit them the most, optimize the space that you have to upgrade your mech. Everything else about it, though, like I said, it's very mediocre. The dungeons are pretty simple so far. The puzzles are very simple. The side quests are very simple. It's not a challenging game. Overall, it's just in the charm, in the atmosphere, and the graphics. I'm hoping that the story starts to pick up a little bit, as I've been told later on. So definitely, if you have the DS, pick up Solatorobo. This is a great game for a system that's sadly on its way out soon. They're not really making too many DS games anymore, or I should say DS games that interest me anymore. So this is one of the final swan songs for the DS. Okay, let me just pick up this monster here. This is the Uncharted 3 Collector's Edition for the PlayStation 3. I did a review of Uncharted 3, so you can definitely check that out on my channel. I'll have a link for that right down below. Overall, though, my impressions and review of it was that it's a really good game. Not as good as Uncharted 2 because the impact that Uncharted 2 had when it first released after Uncharted 1, it was so dramatic over the first game. This is more of the same. I didn't quite get as involved in it as Uncharted 2. I just feel that Uncharted 2 is still one of the best games ever made. But this is still a really great game. Check out my review for my full impressions on it, though. And I got the Collector's Edition because I wanted the statue that they included in there. Alright, next is one more game that I have also reviewed on my channel already, and I'll leave a link to that below. But that is Rime Rider Kerorican on the WonderSwan Color. This is a game by the creator of Parappa the Rappa and Ribbon. This is exclusive to the WonderSwan Color. It's a very simple, only 4 songs in the entire game, music rhythm game. If you want to check out my review on this, definitely check out the link below. Alright, and also, of course you all know I have been playing Skyrim, and I'll leave a link below to my impressions video, because my impressions as of right now are also very similar to what they were when I did that video, which was about 40-ish hours into the game. I'm still playing it every once in a while when I can, still really enjoying it. This is one of the best games I've played in a very long time. Without a doubt, leaps and bounds better than Oblivion, but I'm absolutely loving Skyrim. For my full impressions on it, so I don't blab on about it once again, because I've talked about this game every week for the past couple of weeks on AllGenGamers, and I'm not getting tired of talking about it, but I don't want to sound like a broken record here. So, yeah, for my Skyrim impressions, listen to AllGenGamers and check out my Skyrim impressions video down below. Okay, next is another game that I was really looking forward to this year, and that is Sonic Generations for the Xbox 360. What can I say? This is one of the best Sonic games to come along in a very long time. And just with same thing with Sonic Colors, it's going to be a shame because most people will probably write this off as being another bad Sonic game. Because let's face it, a lot of recent Sonic games, besides Sonic Colors, haven't been that good. But this is a huge fan service game to not just Sonic fans, but if you were ever a fan of Sega in general, this is just such a great throwback to classic platformers. For those of you that are not aware how Sonic Generations works exactly, there's classic Sonic and modern Sonic. You play as both in the game, and there are different zones and different eras. So there's 3 different eras. There's, the classic era with the Genesis games, and then there's the Dreamcast era with obviously Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and then you have the more modern era with Sonic Colors and Sonic Unleashed and all that. But there's 2 acts per zone. So let's just take Green Hill Zone for example. Act 1 you'll play as classic Sonic. Typical side-scrolling 2D platformer, plays really great, feels just like the original Sonic Genesis games, which is a really good thing. There's no spin dash, nothing crazy like that, nothing over the top. And then the modern levels, where let's say you play modern Sonic in Green Hill Zone, it'll play like it played in Sonic Unleashed, which is a really good thing because everybody loved the Sonic sections in Sonic Unleashed, but they didn't like the Werehog stuff. So it's really interesting to see how, even if you take classic Sonic and put him in, say, Sonic Colors, so you're playing a modern Sonic game as a 2D platformer, or say you take modern Sonic and you put him in a 2D level, such as Chemical Plant Zone. So it's really interesting to see what they did with the levels. The one thing that kind of disappoints me is it's very short, but that's not the main reason why it disappoints me. It's what they could have done if they had left out certain aspects to the game. Because they tried to do, it's a great fan service game, so they added in like artwork and trophies and all kinds of stuff that you can unlock. In the mission modes, there's all different types of things that they have you do. Some of them are not that fun. Like if you have to race your doppelganger, it's like a really hard time trial. Some of them you have to collect a certain amount of rings before another character. Others are just really well done and are completely different from anything else that you played in the game. But if they had left out all those missions and just focused on making more platform levels instead of just having, you know, Act 1 and Act 2 per zone and just added in more levels and stuff, it could have been much more better than what it turned out to be. But I don't want to sound like, you know, I hate the game, because it's actually a lot of fun. If you're a fan of Sonic, if you're a fan of Sega games, platformers in general, you really owe it to yourself to check out Sonic Generations. Don't pass this one up, you know. Same thing with Sonic Colors, another excellent Sonic game. Sega is really going down the right direction with Sonic games lately, so definitely check this one out. Okay, so the next one came out right around the same time as Skyrim, just about, and I meant to cancel my pre-order on this only because I knew I wasn't going to have much time to play it at the time, but I forgot to do that, so it showed up anyway. And that's Rayman Origins. Really great game. It's a 2D platformer with some of the best 2D visuals and animation I've seen this console generation. The animation in this is amazing. It's so colorful, it's like a cartoon come to life. If you're a fan of platformers, you really need to check this out. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to try the co-op in this yet, which sort of plays like New Super Mario Bros. On the Wii, in that you can do up to 4 players, and you play on the same screen, and if someone dies or something, you have to bring them back by touching their bubble, and they'll drop back down into the level. So it still really works as a single-player game, but it's kind of meant to be played co-op, which I did play co-op when I went to PAX Prime, but I only played it for 10 or 15 minutes. It seems very chaotic, but once again, highest recommendation for me if you're a fan of 2D platformers. This is a gem. We haven't had a game like this on the consoles that I can think of in terms of this presentation quality. It's really, is it worth the $60 price tag? That's a big issue for some people. But there is a lot of content to this. The game is actually quite challenging. There's a lot of collectibles to pick up. There's a lot of varied game worlds. I haven't beat it yet. I've only sat down to play it like once, which was for a span of about 2 hours. So I'm not too far into it, but man, this game screams production value, and it will probably blow you away if you're not too familiar with watching gameplay from it. So Rayman Origins, definitely check it out. Okay, next, the next 2 games I haven't had a chance to play yet, but I just wanted to talk about them briefly. On Black Friday, believe it or not, this year I didn't really buy too much. I tried to just kind of cut back, and because I was playing, Skyrim and other stuff at the time. But I did pick up this because it was $5, and how could you resist Metroid Other M, brand new for $5? I mean, sure, the game hasn't gotten the best reception, but it hasn't gotten totally slammed in terms of people's, reception and reviews of it. So I'm willing to give it a chance for $5. So it kind of makes me glad that I didn't end up spending the full $50 for this when it first came out. It's such a shame because, sadly, Nintendo will probably be a bit more hesitant to release a Metroid game in the future, so we'll see how this is. And also for the Sega CD, this is a game I've been meaning to pick up for quite some time, and that is Shining Force CD. What this is here, it's a port of the Game Gear Shining Force games, which is actually pretty expensive, especially if you want a box copy. So this is a somewhat cheaper alternative, or I guess you can say it's around the same price, but it's a port of the Game Gear games, which obviously you don't have to play them on the Game Gear now, which, quite honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of busting out that huge Game Gear and slapping in the batteries and everything and trying to play it. So I'd much rather prefer playing it on my TV. So Shining Force CD, looking forward to playing this. Alright, next I got one more Sega CD game, and that is Shadow of the Beast 2. I watched some gameplay of this, and I've never played it before. I never played the Genesis version or anything like that. I watched some gameplay of the Sega CD version, and the first thing that caught my attention was, first of all, the atmosphere once again. Just like the first Shadow of the Beast game, it's got all kinds of different creatures and monsters, and it's just got a great atmospheric world to it, which is what I've always loved about the Shadow of the Beast games. One thing it also borrows from the first Shadow of the Beast is the extreme difficulty. This game is insanely hard, once again. But what it also has is another killer soundtrack. It kind of seems out of place, but it's so out of place that it makes the game that much better. I mean, it's got like hard rock to like kind of smooth, I don't know, almost jazz music at times. It's very strange. But what made me stop playing it was, first of all, high learning curve. You know, you got to memorize where the enemies are coming from, and so you don't die. But I made it decently far, and then my game kind of glitched out, and I got stuck in a pit where I just continued to die over and over and lost all my continues and had to start all over again. So I kind of lost my ambition to continue playing it, but I'll get back to it eventually.